Gael, can you talk a bit about Cassandro as this fascinating character in Mexican culture? How much did you know about him when you first got the opportunity to play this character, and what appealed to you about the idea of getting into the ring and actually doing this kind of work?
Yeah, I've been saying this because contrary to what might be thought, I never thought of ever doing and growing up in Mexico, being Mexican, I never thought of doing a lucha libre film. Although there's, we come from a huge culture of lucha libre into filmmaking, no, with all the El Santo movies and Blue Demon and all those characters, When Roger came and proposed this idea, I was like, wow, man, of course I have to do a lucha libre once in my life, A lucha libre film, like it has to be, and it better be good, It's the best that is through a character of Cassandro that he's one of the pillars of him with his contemporaries. They subverted completely the way that Exóticos were seen in the lucha libre world, and later Exóticos became the characters that we all wanted them to win. They became the most fun superheroes that we supported, and that we wanted them to win in the lucha libre, as well as them being incredibly good at wrestling. So when getting this opportunity, I was very excited and very happy to participate and to put on those costumes. That was fascinating.
And also just physically, it seems like a very different kind of challenge for you. You're jumping around and doing all these big poses and so forth. And what's a rehearsal process like for something like that, especially because it's a real guy and there's footage of him doing that?
Well, this is important to say because obviously there is it is a theatrical sport. No, it's a performative sport. It's completely, it is incredibly hard, very acrobatic, very strong, very hard. They hurt themselves really badly. And we might think that it's choreographed, but actually it's sort of like salsa. If you see people dancing salsa and you don't know nothing about dancing salsa, you think that they rehearsed before. But you could stand up with someone and dance pretty well, even if you don't know that person ever, no? It's a bit like that. Wrestling has that. So it is not rehearsed, It is something that you learn the skills and then you improvise. So most of the things that we saw are sort of things that we agreed to do, but we never rehearsed. We just prepared a lot. We trained a lot to do this. The process of training is really heavy. It's a little bit of like judo wrestling training, combined with a lot of gymnastics as well, and combined with a lot of resistance and also the performative kind of notion, which, for me being an actor kind of comes, it was great, fascinating to be and engage with the audience and kind of play. And also with a character like Cassandro is so much more fun than just playing a straight up superhero character, behind the mask.
I definitely want to ask you more about the superhero element, but first, just in terms of collaborating with the other actors, did you ever worry you were going to hurt somebody? There are some moments where you just throw somebody down or they're throwing you down. Yeah. When Roger calls cut, you just go straight back to being, nice Gael and say, I'm sorry about that? Or how does it affect you to have to do that?
Yeah, well, it's crazy because at the same time, looking at it from the outside, you think there's a big fight going on, but on the contrary, there's a lot of camaraderie, a lot of fraternity, and a lot of taking care of each other because we work together. No, we need each other. So it's a bit like acting in a way. It's a bit like theater in that sense. Like first of all, we have to trust each other, and of course, there's training. I would ask, like inside stories to all the wrestlers, about has there ever been someone that has not done or not kind of obeyed the code of wrestling? And they say, of course. And those guys are destroyed, Actually, they say that sometimes the real fight happens in the locker rooms, like the real fights, It's, outside this is something, it's theater that expands to a kind of a mythological experience. It's really strange, it's really fascinating and really cool, and it kind of might be seen just like a little folkloric sort of thing. No, but it has a lot of significance and there's a lot of things going on there.
And the other aspect of it is that you have this openly gay man who's performing that way in front of an audience that's very macho, and you know, the assumption is that Mexico is just a more conservative place in general. But through Cassandro's story, we see that it's not that simple. I mean, what is your understanding of how far Mexico has come in terms of being more open-minded to somebody like Cassandro, and how do you feel like the film is sort of a reflection of that?
Yeah. Well, when we were doing Y Tu Mamá También, I remember we were asked this question a lot because obviously we had to sort of explain Mexico, as well. And it's very difficult to explain Mexico. But using these terms about conservative and, if Mexico is conservative, then the United States is Puritan, It's like that would be, if we would go to very sort of simple classifications, then that would be a definition. And that's why and we were talking about that on the phone, no? That's why the nature of machismo, in a way, is way different in Mexico than it is here, no? There is an accepted kind of sort of hypocrisy that is really strange because, mariachi is full of, it's so macho that it's so camp, and charros as well, and all the kind of embroidery and the feathers and the things. And so there's always been a kind of a thin line, an interesting thin line. It's right there on the surface. Let's say the homosexual nature of machismo, It is very close. It is very binding. And yeah, I mean, I can talk about this for a long time because it's a long discussion and it's interesting. But what they did is actually they turned they subverted the image, of what people had about the Exóticos, and on how the Exóticos had to win. But it is a big conversation. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you a little bit more about explaining Mexico. I think this is a fascinating aspect of it because Y Tu Mamá También, this was over 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. It was a Spanish language film that ended up having a very international life. Now you have a film like Cassandro it's in Spanish, it's in English, it's a Mexican American character on the border, and we live in a time where I think people are more aware that there are complicated degrees of somebody's identity, and it's not everyone's a Mexican or American. You're in different kinds of places. How much of the change have you felt as an actor in terms of how you're perceived, given that, our culture has evolved a lot since those earlier days?
Yeah, well, there is a big change, and I think it has to do something very big that I sort of see that we haven't been able to transcend is the fact that for Mexican Americans, for example, Mexico is still very far away, and nowadays, obviously, with what's been going on in the United States, the United States is becoming a kind of a much more delicate ground, no, for Mexican Americans. It's a strange relationship, no, and I think that's something that cinema can help a lot to engage. Kind of a quite curious and quite controversial conversation, which would be interesting to do. No, like I would love to see more Mexican American films being done because I'm not Mexican American. I'm from Mexico. My films I do them in Spanish. It's a whole different world, and it's always been fascinating for me the world of the border because that in itself is another nation. It is another culture of that is not Mexico. It's not the United States. It's itself a kind of an interesting duality that goes on there. Just imagine what it would be, to grow up with a wall and with this idea that, that's the other side. You're born in this side, that's the other side, but you're also from that side. And coming and going, well, if you're born in this side, in the United States, it's easier to go to Mexico. But if you're born in Mexico, it's very complicated to go to the United States. And yet your family is there. Your family, like the whole interdependent world and economically and just affectionate world is very interesting what goes on there. So I've always been fascinated by that. But I would love to see more films about that. I like that a lot about Cassandro, that we see that world in a way that it's maybe never depicted before. I haven't seen films about Ciudad Juárez and El Paso that don't have to do with drug cartels or something like that. I think it's the first time I see a film that is not about that.
And you must have been offered roles like this over the years where
Yeah.
people assume, because of who you are and where you come from, this is the kind of thing that they want to fit you into. And I wonder if that's changed at all. Do you feel like there's been any progress in terms of what kinds of roles people think you're the right fit for since you
Yeah.
started?
Oh yeah. That has changed. That has changed a bit, but at the same time, those stories need to be told as well. We might get tired of the glamorization of the violence, but at the same time, these stories need to be told completely. So there's room for everything. I mean, together with this unique stories like Cassandro's story, I mean, I hope that there's more being done in the between Mexico and the United States. More natural co-productions, and that also get a lot of attention. That would be fantastic. And yeah, but I get interesting offers now from all over the world,
Well,
which is
speaking
nice.
of which, it's fascinating that you and Diego Luna were so closely associated early in your careers, and now you're in the Marvel universe and he's in Star
Yeah.
Wars. So what do you make of it? It took like 20 something years to get to that point. What do you make of that now happening?
It's great. It's almost like couldn't be better, no? I think because I have a good friend that also shares the sort of the journey, kind of an experience also of what comes with this. That is a great chance to be able to do what you want, but at the same time, a lot of solitude, a lot of loneliness as well, a lot of perseverance in a kind of reinvention of the artistic journey constantly. And he's a great person to have to bounce back our feelings and our experiences, and we help each other. Therefore, we feel less alone in that sense. And at the same time, we also sustain a kind of a feeling that we don't have to become exiles of ourselves. We don't have to leave the country where we live. Like we can live in Mexico, and we can do all these projects, and we can do everything else, and we can still go back to Mexico and do the series that we finished wrapping recently. We can keep on doing our projects and our films and our production company and our film festival, and all those kind of things. So it's great. It's great to be able to share with him also that, to see him in a galaxy far away.
Are you guys allowed to tell each other where everything is going with your respective franchises? So he has all the secrets and you have all his secrets?
Yeah, in an experience that resembles the kind of kids, like I'll show you mine if you show me yours. That kind of like.
So you know what happens in the second season of Andor, and he's heard about the plans for the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I might know.
Yeah.
I might know certain things, but the other thing is that remember that actors are the last ones to know what's going on. So, like at the moment, I have no idea what. Maybe Diego knows better what will happen with my character in Marvel. I don't know.
You have no idea because Werewolf by Night felt like it was just an introduction. So
Yeah,
you don't know what you're doing next.
I don't know, but I'm really excited. Yeah, I
In the
hope that.
meantime, you've got this series in Mexico that you're just finishing up. So
Yeah.
how are you feeling about kind of going back and doing that? I mean, how different is it from the other kinds of projects you've been doing lately?
Oh, good, good. I mean, it feels great because it was the first time walking into a set, and we knew every single person that worked in this huge film set that we were working on, and we've been working with all these people for many years, but we knew everybody. So that's great also, no? To be working to be kind of developing and growing and with a filmic family. It's fantastic. So I mean, that in itself says a lot of how comfortable and how exciting and how also, yeah, the amount of pressure in a way, or the amount of expectations that exists from us to wanting to do something that hopefully is good. But we knew everybody, and that was great. That was really nice.
As an extension of that, I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about what you've noticed in terms of how people recognize you. I mean, we're doing this interview in a studio, there's people outside in the street, but different people have different references for you. And I'm sure when you're walking around in Mexico or in Argentina, there are people who say they love certain films, but, now you might be walking around in somewhere else and someone says they love you from Werewolf by Night. So
Yeah.
what have you noticed about kind of the different references people have for you?
Yeah, well, a film that in the Spanish-speaking countries was really big, and that I still get a lot of jokes on the street about that, is El Crimen del Padre Amaro, The Crime of Father Amaro. That one, because I was playing a priest and everyone like, hey, Padrecito, you know, like, and that is something that happens there in Latin America a lot, you know. But for example, in right now that I'm working in Italy, they love Pablo Larraín's movies, and Emma specifically, they love that. And I've been approached in the street like, I saw Emma, you know, as if Emma was a kind of a, you know, I mean, it was a film that was seen not very much in other countries, but in Italy it was seen a lot in the cinemas, and it was like, okay, it became a thing. And definitely, I mean, with I think I gained a little bit of bonus points with my kids and with other friends' kids, you know, doing Werewolf by Night, because it was like, oh, finally, we know which. I mean, everyone was saying that he's an actor, and now we know, you know, because my kids didn't, you know, they're kind of starting to get it, but they didn't get it until I did this one. It's like, okay, now we're very proud of you.
Yeah. So now you have Cassandra out.
Yeah.
What is your hope for a film like this now getting out in the world? I mean, there are people obviously who know who Cassandra is and know that world, but there's a lot of people who don't. So
Yeah.
what do you make of kind of the potential for the film to play to that audience that doesn't know about
Yeah.
that world?
Well, I just hope that the joy that Cassandro kind of brought to Lucha Libre transcends into this story, and therefore, like, audiences come out of it wanting to live, you know, and to also embody and look forward to the joy of interpretation as well. Because in the conversation we had on the phone, I also remember, I mean, there were so many things I wanted to mention about this, about what it is to play other people, you know, what it is to play other characters. And I was like, of course, Cassandro also, Saúl Armendáriz invented Cassandro, invented a character. He plays a character in order to find out who he wants to be. Not necessarily who he is. It's more like who he wants to be, who he desires to be. And that's, again, it's the joy of interpretation that I hope that people come out of this thinking, okay, we can always make an act, and we can always portray some other character, and we can always reinvent ourselves. And there is a potential for that. And we don't need to have a definition of who we are, because that's just unnatural, I think.
That thing I want to ask you about is actually fascinating. This is a film that was produced by Amazon. You were on an Amazon series for quite some time, so you've had this relationship with the different ways in which people watch things for a while. Now, obviously, you're in a Disney Plus kind of event movie as well. So how has your relationship to the way that the work that you do gets seen changed? I mean, you also run a film festival that travels around Mexico, so you're very invested in this part of the process.
Yeah, well, I'd say that before COVID, I was very much kind of like, everything helps. You know, I saw most of the classics in my life. I saw them either in VHS copies, you know, like very bad VHS copies, or I saw them in the cinema, in the Cinematheque in Mexico, and I didn't know what they were, you know. So I had like those two joys of being able to watch this kind of, you know, these contraband films, you know, that we would like put them in, wow, you know, I remember watching Pichote like that, you know, for the first time when I was like 15, and it shocked me like completely. It was the only way you could get to see that film, you know, through somebody bootlegging a VHS copy, you know. And then I was also going to the cinema. So I got both worlds in a way. And when the platforms came and started to provide this amount of possibilities to watch everything from every part of the world, I was very glad, because I was like, great. I mean, just imagine the kids growing up in this, you know, this world where all their cinematic references can be basically from all over the world, you know, and that's incredible. And with COVID, what happened to me is that I reached my limit of being able to watch films in my house. Like, I can't anymore. I have to watch them in the cinema. So I'm really glad that I have the opportunity to watch them also online, you know. But man, if I have the option, I would go to the cinema. So I think that my take would be that films that are released day and date, you know, if they have I'm the type of guy that would prefer to go to the cinema to see it. So if they have it on cinemas, that would be fantastic, because I would still, you know, the cinemas would be visited by people like me that we want to escape a little bit.